let's continue and build the navigation that we have here. Now, first of all, let's explore what we have here and then how we're going to build it. So basically we have this navigation, which should be fixed as we're scrolling. And this navigation has a button. It also has a hamburger menu that is not on mobile. It's even on desktop. We've got this hamburger menu where we'll create a custom animation where it actually turns into an X, animates into an X. And when we click it, it opens up a full screen menu on top of everything. Actually on top of everything besides the button, okay? And that is important because we'll need to layer all of these elements one on top of the other. Now, previously in the fundamentals, we've used Webflow's native nav element, which was quite helpful. It created the hamburger menu and replaced all of the nav links inside of the hamburger menu on mobile. But here we have a different scenario where, number one, we have links outside of the navigation. Number two, the hamburger menu opens up a whole full screen menu and animates the way we want. So this whole thing is quite custom. We'll also need to make sure that all of the layering works fine. So we're just going to build it from scratch. So let's revise what we have in the hero section itself. We've used 3 layers. We've used Z index of 0 for the background grid, Z index of 1 for the shoe, and Z index 2 for the text or the hero content. So I would say that the navigation itself needs to be on top of everything. Let's say Z index of 5. Now, when we open up the full screen menu, it needs to go on top of everything, including the menu. So I would say that the menu itself would be Z index of 10. And then we also have the button here, the hamburger menu button, which needs to be on top of everything, including the full screen nav. So that would be Z index of 15 maybe. So this navigation is comprised of 3 different layers and sit on top of all the layers that we have created so far. So let's start out with just building the structure, and then we'll start adding in the content. So first of all, I'm going to bring in the nav outside of the main because the nav is outside of the main. I'm just going to bring in a normal div, and I'm going to call this nav wrapper. And under the settings, just make sure that we set this as a nav, so it's clearly the nav. And accessibility tools know that this is where we are navigating from. Now inside, let's see what we need. First of all, we're going to have the nav content itself. So let's create a div which we'll call nav content. That's okay. Now we're also going to have, besides the content, we're going to have the full screen wrapper, the menu wrapper. So let's go ahead and create another div which we'll call menu wrapper. All right, that's good. And what else do we have here? We also have the background. Note that the grid, we have a grid here in the background that is actually very similar to the grid that we have here. Potentially, I'm just going to use the same grid element because we need the same kind of columns. So let's see, here we called this hero BG. So let's create another div here and set this. We'll call this also nav BG grid. Okay, and the last thing that I want to add here is actually the button. Now, normally you would think, yeah, we're going to put the button inside of nav content alongside with this button and the logo. However, because this button needs to be on top of nav wrapper, I can't actually nest it inside of nav content. Otherwise, we won't be able to make it, a higher Z index than menu wrapper. So I'm going to have to add a div here, and that's actually going to be a link block. So it's going to be a button. And we'll absolute position it just to be in the corner, okay? We'll see why this matters in a second. Let's call this nav menu button. Okay, so we've got this. So let's actually start at the beginning. Let's start with nav content. Let's give it padding that is similar to global padding, left and right. From the top and bottom, we just need a tiny bit, maybe 10. And what do we need inside of nav content? We need the logo. So let's bring in an image and select the logo. And nav wrapper. Let's just make sure that nav wrapper is fixed, and it is 10, and it is aligned to the top. And let's give this a background color of black just so that we can see it. Okay, so here we go. We've got the logo here. Let's also bring in a button. Actually, it's similar to this CTA button that we have here, right? So let's paste this here. Maybe this is going to be is small. Maybe this one is actually smaller, right? This is small CTA, right? So we can add a combo class to the CTA button is small. And now we can just change this to something like 18, make the button tiny bit smaller. And we can take the nav content, turn it into a flex that basically have them space between. and centered. Okay, so we've got the navigation. Actually, probably we're going to have to remove this global padding because we'll put the button here. Let's also put the nav link button just so that we can see what we're doing. So this nav wrapper, let's see what we have. It's fixed and it is 10 Z index. Let's take the nav menu button, and actually just so that we can see where it is, let's give this round white background. So let's go ahead and change the background just so we can see what we're working with. And let's also give it some kind of a size. What size is this? So this is 44 pixels. So 44 width and 44 height. And radius corner of 999, so it's a circle. Great. Now, we've mentioned we want this to be positioned right here, always. So this is also going to be, because it's nested inside of a fixed, it doesn't have to be fixed. It can be absolute and top right corner. And then in terms of padding, we can actually choose the global padding, and we can give it a tiny bit, maybe just like 10 pixels from the top, 10 px. Okay, that's actually good. So that is a good position for this button here. And so for the nav content itself, we can actually remove this, reset this, and just do something manual that's something like this. Okay, let's preview this. Okay, so this is good. So it looks as if they are contained under the nav content, but actually this nav menu button is outside. And now that it's absolute, I can actually go ahead and give this a Z index of 15. Wait, I think I made a mistake following my own plan. I've said that the button needs to be topmost layer, which is 15. The menu itself should be the second layer at 10, and the nav should be the bottom layer at 5 on top of everything that's in the hero. So let me see what I set for the nav wrapper. I set it to 10. This was actually supposed to be 5. And now we can deal with the menu wrapper, which should be the 10. So menu wrapper, let's turn that into fixed. It's also going to be filling up the whole screen, and let's set this Z index to 10. And let's give this a background color of black so we can see something. Okay, so now note the menu wrapper is filling up the whole screen, but it is still under the nav menu button. So if the height would be 0, it would be hidden, and then we can animate basically the menu opening up, and you can see it's hiding everything. It's hiding the menu itself, it's hiding the hero. The only thing that stays on top is the button here, which is what we wanted. So this is great, super fun. I'm going to keep it at 0 right now just so that it doesn't bother us from doing what we need to do in designing the nav wrapper. And so I think we've got the setup, we've got the structure. The only thing that we've got left to do is this nav background grid, where we basically wanted to bring in a grid that's similar to the grid that we have here. So let's see what we've used here. Hero BG is this grid. Let's see if we can bring this inside. So to bring the background behind everything else, behind the nav content, let's turn that into also an absolute position, fill up the whole nav, but give it a Z index of 0, so it's behind everything else in the nav. And let's bring in a div inside and use this hero BG class, hero BG. So now we've got the grid in the background, and we can actually use the same hero BG green outline. So let's bring in another div here. Gray outline. Here we go. So now we've got how many? Let's go here. We basically need here 1, 2, 3, 4. We need 4 of these divs, and then one of them has this gray gradient. So let's go ahead and copy this gray outline 3 more times. 2, 3, 4. And actually, I can't manipulate them because I've got things on top of them. So let's go ahead and see. Yeah, let's go ahead and actually hide the nav content just so that we can touch what's underneath it. I'm going to set this to none. Oh, I can actually set this to none because now I won't be able to touch them. So let's manually set the nav wrapper right now to something like 100 pixels just so that we can see what we have here. This is just temporary, just so that we can go ahead and manipulate. Now I can see we actually have a problem. This hero background, the grid, is not filling up this whole space. We can set it to 100% and maybe 100% here. But the other problem we have here is we've got these 3 columns and the last column is fixed. So it's trying to create 3 columns where we actually don't need them. Maybe it's best if we give this a combo class just because we want to make some adjustments on this grid. And let's call this nav grid. And now I can just change this to maybe, one row. And now we can see them here, and we can make this, the first one span, I guess, 2, and then, let's see what we've got here. The first one span over here. This one spans all the way here. Okay, so now we've got the structure that we need. For the last one, we wanted to give this gradient background, which is a gradient that goes from gray to black. So let's select the last one, and I'm going to add a combo class. We'll call this hero BG grad 3. So hero BG grad 3, and as a gradient from, actually we need this to be from gray to black, but the gray is on top. So let's twist that around. Okay, fantastic. Now we've got this. Okay, so the grid looks okay. We can remove the temporary height that we've set on the hero. Let me just click it, reset it, and we can go back to the content and bring it back to flex. Okay, almost okay, but for some reason this background is getting on top of this menu content. So let's go into the menu content, turn this into relative, and set the Z index to 1. Fantastic. Because we have set the background grid to Z index of 0, then nav content is on top of it now. And with that, we have the whole structure for the nav. Let's review what we've done here. We've got the nav content, which includes the button, CTA button, and the image. We've got the menu wrapper, which is Z index of 10 fixed. So it's going to be on top of everything else. Right now it's set to height of 0, so we're not seeing it. We've got the background grid just as a background to give the grid effect here. And we've got the nav menu button also set to absolute as the highest Z index of 15 on top of everything else. We've got the structure. So in the next video, let's go ahead and create the custom animation for this button here.